Hi, I'm Jane Ryan. I'm a tutor for South Lanarkshire Leisure and Culture, and I'm doing a 6-week course on watercolours. So today we're going to be looking at using a resource to paint peacock feathers with watercolour pencils. So for this project we're going to work on a stylised peacock feather. And instead of using watercolour paints, we're going to use watercolour pencils instead. Now, I've got here a couple of brands. I think this might be a well-known newsagent. And this one here is Inktense pencils. Now, these watercolour pencils have got a very, very vibrant colour to them. So they're slightly different in colour from when you see them in a pencil. They're very, very beautiful and lend themselves really well to something like peacock feathers. So I have got, I suppose, ordinary watercolour pencils, which will be absolutely fine. The Inktense ones, a watercolour brush. It doesn't have to be too fine. This is a number 6 round. Also, art masking fluid, and this is washing up liquid. Now it's I've just used a kind of well-known environmentally friendly one only because it's clear. You could use a green one or a blue one, but I prefer to use this so that there's definitely not going to be any kind of stain on the paper. Wee egg cup to mix it, sharpener, you'll need a pencil as well, and some masking tape. And a little word about the masking tape is try and get an artist's Blu Tac one, because once you've masked off an area like I have here, if you don't use an actual artist's masking tape, what happens is you can lift the paper round the side. If you can't get any of that tape, just take a piece that you want to use, and if you just actually put them on your jeans and flip it off, then you'll find that it'll take the tack away. That'll work. So you want to find a resource to work from. Again, if you go onto Google and print out a copy, that's great, unless you've got a peacock running around your garden. But there's a lot of information going on in this resource here in this picture. So what I'm going to suggest is that we stylise it. So we're just going to look at the shapes and make them a lot simpler, and in that way it'll be easier for me to explain the methods and easier for you to be able to work on it. So I'm only going to take a section up here, and I'm actually going to start with this strange shape in the middle, and I'm going to do this relatively heavy so that you can see it on camera, but when you're doing this for yourself, I would recommend doing it a little bit lighter so that it doesn't show through. That's a pretty straightforward shape here. Just keep checking, it's a wee bit narrower there. It doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be exactly like that. Just has to get a feel for it. This. I'm going to put just a very light line here to remind me that there are feathers going on in here, but they're very, very light. So now we're going to look at the feather fronds that are coming out in either side, and we don't want that many. We want to make them a wee bit wider than they are here, and a little more separate. And you can play about with this. You want them kind of going all in this direction because that's going to give the peacock look, but you can waver them about a wee bit as well. Right, so keep going, keep going, keep going. All the way down here until you've filled up the whole page, and then we go on to applying the masking fluid. So I've drawn out a stylised version of this resource in exactly the same way with pencils. Occasionally what I've done is I've tried to observe a little bit of what's going on here, and where there's maybe fronds of feathers crossing over then it's quite nice to put in a few details like that. But you don't want to get too intricate with it initially because it's quite overwhelming with all the shapes that are going on. What I am going to do is I'm going to show you how to use the masking fluid, and then very briefly I'm going to use a little bit of watercolour pans to do the background. But first we're going to do the masking fluid. Now, so this is art masking fluid here. It smells a little bit like glue, and it's a kind of viscousy liquid. And so I'm going to pour a little bit in here. I don't need too much. Now this is a little bit, the consistency of this is a little bit more watery than you would normally get, and that's because what I do is I put in a little drop of fairy liquid, or this is E-cover, this is the environmentally friendly one, but I like this one because it's clear, so I don't have to worry, as I said before, about the tint. So what I would normally do is put in this full strength, open that, and then put maybe 2 or 3 drops of fairy liquid. Now this works for 2 reasons. One is if you were to use your brush straight into the masking fluid, then you can just say goodbye to the brush because it'll completely ruin it. Some people use old brushes to apply it, but I've found this technique is absolutely brilliant because I've already got the washing liquid in here. What happens is when I use the brush, all I have to do is go and put it into the water and wash it out, because it acts just like a detergent. And this brush has been used lots and lots of times for masking fluid, and I can still use it for painting. So it's a great tip. Also what I do is if I haven't used a lot of that, I just pour it back into here. So when you're applying the masking fluid, it works just like you're painting. And I've already done 3/4 of it, but I'm just going to show you how to go about this. So you're just literally painting it in. If I'm doing something like feathers or some big long shape, I tend to just try and cover as much of it in as few strokes as possible. And also with the brush, instead of doing this, kind of going over lots of times, if you just use the brush and then press down in the brush, the bristles will widen and you'll get exactly the width of that shape that you want. So we'll just go quite light at the top, pressing down so that I'm covering the whole width of that shape. Dries very quickly, but you'll still have plenty of time to work, to apply it all. You've probably got maybe about a week before it's probably a good idea to remove it, before it starts to maybe adhere too much to the paper. So you've got lots of time. And you can be very accurate with it. You don't, obviously, if you want to just paint directly with the masking fluid, then that's absolutely fine as well. But I quite like to have a bit of a guideline. Just come straight down over here. Alright, so while that's drying, I've already done this sort of 3/4 of this masking fluid anyway. So what I'm now going to do is we're masking off the green fronds here because we want to put in a dark background. And if you can imagine not having masking fluid there and having to go down every single area that's in the background, it would be quite time consuming. This way, masking fluid is quite rubbery and it acts as a resist. So I can go in here with some watercolours, or if I was using the watercolour pencils, I could go in and paint all over this without having to go into any detail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix a little bit of ultramarine blue, and a little bit of yellow ochre. Now, although I know it looks like I'm absolutely going in there with the brush, I'm not. I'm being pretty gentle with it. Be careful with your brushes. They can last forever and ever if you're gentle with them. So I'm going to make a colour a bit like this, quite a dark sort of green colour, and I am then going to just go over the whole of the background, avoiding the centre of the peacock feather. And I don't need to have a consistent colour, that's entirely up to you. You can change the colours as you go along. What I've done is I put some masking fluid around the main part of the feather here, so that there's no chance that this blue is going to seep into it. I'm keeping this particular painting dark at the back because I do want this bright green to show up very contrasty. So the more pigment I have on the brush, the darker the ground is going to be. And you can see what's happening. You can see that it doesn't matter how much water is in the pigment, it's not going to sit on top of the masking fluid. I'll just quickly go in here. By this point, this would probably be dry, but I would leave it a little bit longer. So I just want to go over a little bit more of an explanation about how watercolours work and the two different brands of watercolour pencil that I've got here. A great idea when you do get a set of watercolour pencils is to just make yourself up a kind of little graph or a little template of what the colours look like when you're working with them with a bit of pressure and then slowly to less pressure. So for example, if I take, this is a dark green pencil, watercolour pencil, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back and forward but put a lot of pressure on so that it's quite dark, and then as I move along just take the pressure off so that I'm getting a kind of fading, a sort of blending, and then go right to the end so that you're hardly seeing the colour at all. If you do that for all the pencils that you've got in the box, that's a brilliant thing to refer back to. What I've done here is I've actually just used the pencils that I've chosen that suit this particular resource. Now, as I said before, these Inktense pencils here have a very, very strong, vivid pigment in them. These ones are less strong, but I've decided to use both of them. This one to lay down the initial colours for the picture, and the Inktense ones to actually kind of go in a little bit in the ground to put a really darker value in. So if I take just a little bit of water on the brush and always have a bit of paper at hand, and I would just gently go over pencil and work towards the end. Now, what you want to do is, if you start at the darker end of the scale here, there's a good chance that you'll take the darker colour with you along. So what you have to be careful with is, I'm going to work into here and I've got this really lovely, lovely bright colour. If I kept going all the way along to the end, I've got so much of the pigment on my brush now that it would carry on to the end. So just give your brush a clean and just move along, just very gently, like that. so that you can see how the colour's activated with different amount of pigment on it, like that. I'll do one more here. So again, you don't need lots of water. If you put too much water on it, then you'll completely take the strong value out of the colour. So these are the ordinary pencils, and I've done the rest of them, so you can see that you get a lovely strength of colour here, but you've also got the opportunity to come right down the scale to light here. So this is the ordinary pencils. This is the Inktense pencils. Now the colour on the Inktense pencils tends not to really highlight exactly what they look like. This is a very, very dark green here. Let me see this one. In fact, this is a dark green here. So if I take that one, which is this colour here, and go in, you can see how intense that is. The beautiful, beautiful colours. Down like that. So that's why I'm going to use Inktense for the stronger values. Another little technique with watercolour pencils, which is good to know, is that if you are blending a strong area with a light area, always blend with your brush from light to dark for the same reasons that I've mentioned here. Because if you're wanting to lighten up an area, if you start there and blend the two from the dark part of it, it'll all be dark. So the good idea is when you're blending, and I'll give you an example here, is that you blend towards the dark area, and that way you'll be lifting out paint, but not redistributing it elsewhere. So you can see there, I can actually lift every time I use the brush. Once I'm taking the residue of the paint off on it, and that will save you getting too much dark when you're painting. So we've let the watercolour dry on top of the masking fluid, given it, I don't know, maybe 10-15 minutes. And now we're going to remove it. Right, so you do need a little bit of pressure. Make sure your hands are nice and clean. You don't want any kind of greasiness in your hands, and you're literally just pushing it away. And there are not many feel-good factors as good as this in painting, drawing and painting, but this is lovely. So you can actually very quickly just remove all the masking fluid. Actually, you can see there, it's lovely and stringy. Make sure, as I said before, your hands are clean and dry, because you don't want to be reactivating any of that watercolour you've got on the ground. There we go. Now you might get little areas where if you haven't brushed it on thick enough, the watercolour has come through. Just give it a little bit more pressure. You'll probably find that you'll get most of that off. Sometimes actually that's quite a nice look. In fact, quite often it's a nice look. Okay. So you get this lovely clear paper underneath. Right, so with the pencils, what we're going to do is there's a kind of degree of delicacy, I suppose, happening in here in the final one, but we just want to get the initial colour, on the paper. I'm going to use a slightly different colour because I've actually lost most of my pencil here. So I'm going to use an Inktense for this one, and I'm going to just literally go in with this coloured pencil and really rapidly but carefully just cover all the fronds that are going up. Now, what I will do here is I'm going to show you just a few techniques that are handy for using a colour pencil like this. But I'm going to do a few with this green one while I've got some left in the pencil. Take a little bit more time than this. I'm going a little bit fast just for the demo, but you take your time and enjoy it because it's great. It's great. Everything's great if you get a wee bit of time to enjoy it. Right, so I'm not going to do all of it, but I'm just going to do a few up here. And then, because I've picked the colours out with these pencils, I'm now going to go in with a yellow around the edge. Again, I can be quite speedy with it. And you can play about with colours, you know, you can use whatever colours you think suit the project you're doing, and you might want to even actually completely change them. I've got slightly more orangey. Oh, down here. Just be careful with the pencil, sometimes they break quite easily. I'll just do a little area there. And I've got now, even though I am being really quite fast and a little less tidy than I would normally be, when you start to activate the pencils with the brush, you're going to be able to move these colours all around. And for the centre blue, I'm actually going to use the normal kind of ordinary intensity pencil, because later on I'm going to go in with the Inktense one. If you don't have Inktense, you can use a black pencil, watercolour pencil to get a bit of depth in it. Just be a wee bit careful with the dark, because you don't want the black, you just don't want to muddy it or too much. Okay, so there you go. So we have a bit of colouring done. Now the fun bit. So you've got your brush, some clean water. And now we can go in and put the water down and just very carefully using the brush. Be careful when you're actually starting to paint that you don't go straight up to the edge. The minute your brush puts pressure on, it moves and the tip will go to the edge. So you can very, very gently just start moving that colour around, and you can see, which is the wonderful thing about watercolours, is that although you've put the majority of the pencil mark just there, right, that's almost in itself like having a little pan of watercolour, because you can just keep going, returning to that and moving that along. I could pick some up from here and I could distribute it down there. Look at that, it's fantastic. Yep, and you just keep moving it. If you want to apply a little bit more colour, you can just go straight back in and put a little bit more on. Just be careful if you're putting pencil onto wet, just in case you lift the surface of the paper, but experiment with it. So I'm going to cover this over. I can see that that's lighter there, it doesn't matter, I actually quite like it. And you see here where it's really quite rough, if I just start to move in there and just gently bring that round. Well, if masking fluid was the first feel-good factor, I think this is going to have to be the second one, because it's really, really good fun. Right, so we're going to cover it there, just like that just now. Let it dry, just let it dry and see what happens to it. Now be careful here, if you do want to go in to the lighter blue, as I said before, just be careful you don't drag that dark blue into that area, because we get time afterwards, we can easily soften that area off by dragging the light blue into the dark blue area, and that will make it a much more gentle transition, and it will keep this area as light as you want it. Okay, so you can see what's happening. Just get lovely soft areas. In fact, this is a completely different painting to this one. It's just the way that I'm working, probably because it's a bit speedier. And as you can see here, although I've only done pencil in there, I can lift that colour and very quickly just redistribute it up the top. Right, so you keep going until you have kind of smoothed out the kind of graininess of the pencil. I've used really quite rough paper to do this one, but you could use a smooth watercolour paper. If you go into the shop to get some, if it's a very smooth paper, it's called hot pressed, and if you see the term cold pressed, then it means that when you touch the paper, you'll get a kind of sort of dimpled effect to the surface. Okay, so you'd work your way along. You're working your way along like this, and we'll now go on to the next stage, the almost finished stage, and I'll show you a few extra techniques. So this is the final one, but there's still one or two bits I can do to finish it off, and I want to show you a few kind of more intricate techniques that can embellish your picture after this stage is completely finished. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to do is I want to try and get this sense of depth where the feathers are on top of a background, and the paint initially that I put down wasn't dark enough. So what I've been using is I've taken this deep indigo, which is a blue, not a black. Again, you could use a black if you want an absolutely extreme statement, but the dark blue works really well. And what I've done is I have gone into the areas where maybe two of the greens meet, so in here, and just lay down a few strokes with the pencil, like that. So I don't need a lot, because if you remember, I can drag that colour down, and I don't want it to be completely dark. I would like it to have it go from dark to light to dark to give an idea of light. So I'll just put a few more in here, So I'm just going to darken in that area, and a wee bit more dark here, and a wee bit dark there. And here. And again, what to do is I quite often just use my finger to take a little bit off, but you can use a brush, and you just gently, very gently, almost brush stroke by brush stroke, cleaning it, just pulling that down. If you go in too heavy, I don't know, you can be very light with this medium, and it's a good knack to get. Just gently just pull it down. Now I'm pulling the dark into the light area at the top here, because I do want it to come down, but the minute I want it to blend a little bit more here, I'm just going to do it in the opposite direction and take the light to the dark. So you just work your way around, and it's up to you. It's your decision as to where you want areas to work. It's not prescriptive. It's not prescriptive. Okay, so I've got a few different greens working in here. If I wanted to see this, there's a part here where there's quite a few greens together. What I want to do is maybe introduce a slightly different colour. What I can do is take, let's see, we'll take this green here, which is the apple green, and I can actually just take the colour off the tip. Now it's quite watery, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose an area here and just bring that colour over. So it's called glazing. You're just laying quite a transparent second layer, maybe halfway through one of these fronds, so that you get a two colour layer. Okay. So I'm not covering the whole thing, I'm just brushing it over, give it a nice feeling of depth. Okay, so just work away at it, and you probably work away at it to the point where you completely ruin it, but that's just part of the art process, and knowing when to stop is always a good thing. So a little bit about then here in the middle, when you're doing it completely with the watercolour pencils and they're wet, then you're going to get a blending effect. But there is this effect here where you've got all the little details of the feather coming out. So what I've done is I've taken a darker pencil, a little bit sharper than this. Keep them sharp if you're going to be going in with a bit of, sharp like that, and just with kind of quick, sharp pencil lines. Watch your pencils, they can get a little bit broken if you drop them, or if you kind of do get what you pay for a wee bit with pencils sometimes, because these ones have broken a wee bit. You can see I'm just gently working into it so that I'm getting this effect of movement. Up to the side. I'm going to sharpen up the blue. In fact, I'm going to sharpen up the ink tense one, because I want to carry on that kind of feel in the middle. But you have to be really, really careful you're not filling it in, because you want some of that background colour from the watered down ink to show through. It doesn't have to be terribly obvious for the eye to pick it up when you're looking at it, so just a few more lines. And that gives you a nice effect of feathers. And that's it.